Hello and welcome back to the second part where we created this new player sword and shield PDA. So just like we had in the player unarmed PDA, we're gonna remove let the attributes for the health remain the same. So his health will be 100 on the moment he equips the weapon. The states, I'm gonna keep the states right now. I'm not gonna change anything. The abilities, these have to change later, but let me just make sure that the PDA is actually working correctly. The inputs, nothing fancy here, just attack. Block is not needed. You can remove this if you want for now. Jump, we all know it. Um, so we're gonna have to hook the sword and shield PDA with the weapon that we created. So sword and shield here will have the sword and shield PDA. And if this is working properly, what you need to do is if we go to uh, the controller, which you're all gonna have. I just have this, and you will have it as well. Just make sure you connect it. So the moment we have the weapon equipped, it's gonna start printing if a state is active. Idle should be active right from the beginning, since we're equipping it on start. So if I try playing, you'll see that I see on the top left there is a state idle right here. If this is active, then you equipped your weapon properly. However, we did not change the unarmed weapon, so we're gonna have to make sure that it's changed to the new weapon, because if it's not changed, then it's gonna remain on unarmed. Whatever you give unarmed will remain. So sword, shield weapon. Now we double check to make sure it's running, and in fact it actually is. You can also see that the sword and shield are both equipped to the sockets that I assigned in this on this side of it. You see when we assigned it here, this is where it's gonna go to. So the unequipping socket is the same as the socket that you have when you attach it. Just bear that in mind. Now, what we want to do, other than just walking around, I want to equip the weapon, so we're gonna need to change the equipping state and the equipping animation as well. So to do that, we're gonna go to Sword and Shield PDA, and this is where the action we're gonna start. So we have the equip state, and we have multiple states that you can pick up from, or you can extend, you can change, you can override, whatever you want to name it. You can remove and add, however you like it. So equip is something I'm gonna keep. I'm gonna show you how to equip and how to do these things. So let me start with that. Now equip, which is part of the plugin, you're all gonna have this without being verified even. It has a start and an end, like I explained before. The start will perform the selected ability if you have multiple abilities, but we only have one, so the selected ability will always be this one. And we have the default allowed inputs. So this part, you will need a default allowed inputs if you want the animation that you're gonna run for equip to perform an upper body blend space, as well as what we had here. I can show you again. This layered blend bare bone is extremely important if you're familiar with animation blueprint. If you want a full body, just use a full body, you don't have to care about this. But if you want the upper body to work as well as be able to move, because when I showed you in the controller, if the state doesn't allow it to run, it won't even run. So until the animation is finalized. So with this one, it will allow the move forward and move right to function while you're equipping the weapon. So you can limit the upper body in two places. One is here from the controller. Let me just show you again. If you open the parent controller, you're gonna see that movement right here has this does state allow input that I explained before in the previous videos. Now again, if you don't have a default, what do you call it? Default allowed inputs, it won't even fire. Let's go back to equip. If you don't have this, it won't even fire. So make sure you have this on any ability or a state that will perform an ability. Will perform an input while ability is inactive. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, at the end of any state, make sure you have this. Return back to idle. Any state that you create, whether you duplicate or override or whatever you want to do, at the end of it, make sure you're setting it back to idle. If for development, let me tell you this from now, always keep the state on the top left here. Whatever state is active, it will show. If by some chance it stopped showing, then then you know something is wrong with the way you're handling your states. So make sure always it sets back to idle or any other state that you're aware of. In our example, when you try to equip, which is gonna be on the left mouse button, or attack input, which is registered here as well. Let me close this because we don't need it anymore. We don't need this either. You see these inputs that we had? Attack will fire as well as jump. No other things will fire. So in that case, it will attempt to run here, can fire input. Can fire input is gonna ask the current active state. So the current active state on the beginning was idle. Now to double make sure that we can fire attack, we go to idle state. And you're gonna see this long list of things that you can perform if you're idle. One of them is gonna be attack. So if attack is active, if attack is here within the construct default allowed inputs, this one will proceed, so it's gonna go to true. Does the state allow input? It's gonna also return true, because we don't have anything that is running on a period of time for the animations, because we don't have animations on idle. Montages, my bad, not animations, montages. So this will also proceed, this one will be saved, and equip will try to perform. Now if equip tries to perform, it's gonna ask this one, can perform state. For this, for the state functions, I'm gonna show you 3 of them. So you have try perform state of a class, and it has a condition if you wanna check a condition. You also have perform state of a class, and you can specify a specific class, or you can do it just like this one by getting it from a tag. We also have try perform states with an S of a class, which takes an array. The array, like you see here, takes more than one. Whichever works, whether you have condition check or on or off, whichever works will stop the chain of surging and will just perform it. So if 0 works, 1 won't even check. If 1 works, well, 0 already was passed, and so on. For the getters, we have all these functions that you might find useful. In most of the cases, you won't need them. The most 2 common ones is get state of a class and get state of gameplay tag. The other functions depends on your specific needs, so I'm not gonna go more into it unless I see some of you asking for it. So keep that in mind. If there's something that you guys don't feel that you understand correctly or need more help with, just make sure you type again in Discord. I'm just a single guy that's doing the tutorials. If there's a lot of need for one thing, I'll consider doing a tutorial. So I'm not gonna save these. Now let's return back to equip. And it will perform, let's go over this again. If condition check is true, it will perform this function before proceeding with setting the state itself. So if it's false, it won't even check, it will just run. There's also another function here that I showed you earlier, which is called perform state of a class. What this does is it won't check for anything, it will just perform it right away. So if you're setting any variables here, which I do not really recommend, it won't even run. So keep that in mind. Now I'm hooking this to the array. I only have one type of equip, so I'm just gonna stick with that one, which is something you have here. Remember all the variables, you can add any variables you want here, anything, any functions, macros, whatever you like. Then if this proceeds, it will start with the start state function. I'm always calling the parent version. Make sure you check what's in the parent if there's something that you seem to need. Get selected ability. We're gonna start with this function. Get selected ability is the ability that is saved if you run this function. So if you don't run the can perform state, the get selected ability won't even have a value. So make sure you double make sure that can perform state is running before you have this. Or you could at least do it here. You can take this function, even though they might return false or true. put it here. If one of the functions return true, by the way, like one of the arrays, it won't proceed. So make sure one of them will return true. Or simply don't use this and just hook this up. However you prefer. By the way, any state or ability or any blueprint that is inside the plugins, please do not adjust it. The reason behind this is if I ever update something with a bug fix or an addition, if you change anything in here, it will override anything that you have. So please don't put any blueprints in the plugin folder. Sorry, in the it's gone now. Don't put anything that is in the plugin content or modify anything in here. If you want to modify anything, create a child and just put it anywhere else. Do not keep it on the plugins. And do not modify anything here. You see me, I'm not saving because I don't want to interrupt what you guys have. So this will return the equip ability if you have the can perform state, and it will perform ability of a class. Similarly, this function is very similar to what you saw in the controller. There is this that is taken from the state manager, which is under the controller itself. So that is also another component from the character directly that you can see here, called the ability system component. So the ability system component, the one responsible for running the ability, will perform the ability right away if you have the perform ability of a class. Similarly to states, you have try perform ability of a class as well as abilities of a class. But since we're already checking for the check abilities to run, now if you open this function, it's gonna get the ability component from the performing actor, which is in our case gonna be a character. So that will also call the can perform ability of a class, and if it returns it true, it will set the selected ability to trigger, which is the function you see here, this one. And that's it. That's all you need to know. If it's true, it will proceed. If it's not, or not found altogether, it won't even continue. If we go back to equip, I don't need the idle. If you go to equip, so that one is already gonna check the ability for conditions and right away fire it. Now what about the conditions? How do you add your conditions? Now if you open the ability that you're specifying, which is gonna be player equip ability. Oh, by the way, that's very important, I forgot to mention. Again, on the right side, make sure every state that you have has a gameplay tag, and if it's time controlled or not. Most of the states for the player will not be time controlled, so you don't have to worry about that part. And after setting that up, you're gonna do the same for the ability you have. So the ability will also have a gameplay tag, and if it has a cooldown or not. Now equip doesn't have a cooldown, it's just a one-time thing, so it doesn't matter. Now here, similarly to states, it has a can perform. The can perform is wherever you want to decide the result of the equip, try to equip state. Here I'm just checking if an active state is active, so at least in idle, bare minimum. If you're not, it won't even bother. I'm checking the montage abilities from the data asset. So the data asset here has abilities montage, as you can see it right here. Each ability that you create, you specify its class, as well as which montages to run. So what I'm checking here is if the length at least is bigger than 1, or the value of equip montage is set to something. So let's say you don't want to rely on the data asset to get your animation, you just want to set them right here, you can do that, no problem. Or if you want all the things in one place, you can just rely on the data asset, and from there you can take what you want to take from the animations and leave whatever you want to leave. So right here I'm checking at least if equip montage has a montage, or the data asset has values. So I'm not gonna change anything on the plugin like I said. I'm just gonna put it here. So let's do the equip montage and we can return back to the rest of the function. So on protector, there's an equip montage that I'm creating. Equip montage is gonna take this one, and this is an upper body. When I said that you can do the upper body and walk at the same time, that's what I meant. If you want this to be full body, make sure it's on the default slot. So upper body, and I'm equipping both weapons at this point. So attach weapon at index is an is what do you call is a notifier that you all have from the plugin. What you need to look at here is the weapon index as well as if it's gonna be to equip slot or not. So attaching weapon without setting this boolean will simply unequip it. And the index, I'm gonna explain the index in a second. And same thing here. So I remember I had the sword as well as the shield. Both of these had index 0 and 1. How do I know that? From here. When we had the sword and shield weapon, it had something called register weapon. Now what register weapon does is it adds it to an array of weapon properties. So the one at 0, and make sure you always know this, the one at 0 was the first one you had. So on this sequence, we did this one first. So the first one was the weapon, and the second one was the shield. So the index 0 was weapon, and index 1 was shield. In this case, now you know what this function does. It attaches the weapon at index 0 and 1 to its equip socket. That's what it does. At the end of every montage, always keep this in mind, end the current active ability or end ability of gameplay tag, and make sure you specify this. If you do not specify this, you will get a warning when you start playing it. So in current active ability, what this will do is it will go to the ability that you had fired, which is this, and attempt to end it. So if it tries to attempt to end it, whatever you have hooked at the end of end ability will fire. So I'm setting it back to idle at the end of the equip animation. So any animation that you have that has this will attempt to end the current active ability, which is gonna be the equip for the equip animation, and setting it back to whatever it had. So make sure always set something at the end of each ability or state, whichever you want to rely on. So for the states for the that doesn't require an animation, like the idle or walking or sprinting, you don't have to do anything. But if it's something that performs a montage, make sure the end ability, which will fire the animation, the ability which will fire the animation, has an end ability that returns it back to its origin or any other state that you want to go to. So if you have a chain of abilities that you want to go into, so from equip to something else, you can specify it also here if you like. So let's go to back to the equip state. The concept here behind the end, I'm going to have to explain this in simpler terms. What a try perform state of a class does is essentially, let me try to show you here. When this function is called, any current active state will attempt to call the end state. The end state is the one that is already active before starting the new state. So keep that in mind. Before start is active, the current one that is running will try to call its end before the start begins. So that is something to always keep in mind. It's not the same case on in abilities, because the states only one is active at the same time. But you can run an ability without making it active. How? I'm gonna explain to you in a bit. So the length of this video already is too long. It's over 20 minutes by now. So I'm gonna end the video right now, and I'm gonna continue with the equip ability and state explanation in the next one. So see you in the next one.